They say love doesn't always arrive in thunder or lightning, nor in dramatic gestures that scream through the silence. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, gently, like morning fog over a sleeping city, slow, unnoticed, until suddenly you can't imagine the world without it. Isla had always believed in quiet things, quiet mornings, quiet books, quiet strength. She had learned early that the loudest people rarely held the deepest truths. Her world was shaped by subtlety, the flick of a page, the silence between music notes, the way the sun slid softly through her bedroom window. Every Friday after work, she'd take the same walk down a narrow street in London's old Camden district, where the noise of the world faded and the air smelled of ink and rain. At the end of the street was a small, dusty bookstore called Camden and Company. Books, barely held together by crooked bricks and ivy that climbed the exterior like forgotten memories. It was in that bookstore that she first saw him, Ethan Carter, seated cross-legged in the poetry section, always at the same hour, always alone, always immersed in a worn paperback of Neruda, Rumi, or Cohen. He never looked up, not even when she passed right by him, but she noticed everything. The way he underlined certain lines with a pencil, the way he furrowed his brow when reading something tragic, the way his eyes paused longer on pages that spoke of lost fathers or missed chances. For nearly 6 months, they occupied the same space without speaking, a shared silence, a growing curiosity, until one wet November evening, as the wind howled outside and the world smelled like cold stone and old leaves, their hands reached for the same copy of 20 love poems and a song of despair. Their fingers touched, briefly but enough to freeze the air. She looked up, startled. So did he. "Seems we share a taste for beautiful sadness," he said, his voice low and rough like a jazz record. Isla, caught between the pulse in her wrist and the comfort of the moment, replied, "Or for the kind of hope only pain can understand." That was the first time they spoke. After that, words came slowly, then all at once. They began to sit near each other on purpose, first in the bookstore, then in a nearby cafe, then in long walks through Hyde Park, where fallen leaves made music beneath their shoes. Ethan told her things he hadn't told anyone in years, that he was once a writer, published even, until his father died suddenly and left a silence inside him so loud he couldn't hear his own voice anymore. He hadn't written a word in 2 years. Isla, a quiet graphic designer who lived alone and loved to press flowers into old books, told him about her mother's long illness, the way grief teaches you patience, and how beauty often hides in the places people overlook. One Sunday afternoon, she invited him to see her most secret place, a hidden garden tucked behind her apartment building, surrounded by a rusted iron gate and overgrown with wild ivy and thistles. In the center stood a single rose bush. Every year, it bore just one bloom, a deep red rose that arrived late, long after the others had withered. "I call it the last rose," she told him. "It always comes back. I don't know why. The others die no matter how I care for them. But this one, it survives." Ethan knelt by the flower and touched a petal as if afraid it might disappear. "Maybe it's waiting, like all things that matter." They sat on the old stone bench nearby and talked until the sky grew dark and the stars crept in, uninvited and infinite. Over the weeks that followed, their connection deepened into something unnamed but undeniable. They never called it love, they didn't need to. It was in the way she brought him mint tea on rainy days. It was in the way he remembered every detail she ever shared. It was in the silences they shared and the stories they didn't have to tell. But as winter approached, something in Ethan began to shift. He grew quieter, sometimes distant. There were days when he would disappear for hours without a word, his eyes shadowed by something Isla couldn't reach. Then one day, he was gone. No text, no call, nothing but a letter left for her at the bookstore. She opened it with trembling hands. His handwriting was hurried, as though written through hesitation. "Dear Isla, I thought I was healing, but I am not. I thought I could stay, but I can't. You brought light into a place that had long gone dark, but I am still not the man I need to be. Not for you. I need to go away. I need to find the words again, and maybe find myself with them. I hope one day I'll return, not as a ghost, but as someone who can love you in the way you deserve. Please forgive me." And then, his name. That winter was colder than most. Isla kept visiting the garden. She didn't talk much anymore. Every Friday she wrote him a letter and placed it in a wooden box beneath her bed. Letters she never sent. In them, she told him about her week, about a poem she found, about how the rose hadn't bloomed yet. She wrote about how much she hated him for leaving, and how much she loved him still. Time passed, slowly, painfully. Spring returned like a whispered apology. The garden bloomed, and so did the rose. One morning, Isla walked into the garden and found something unexpected beneath the bush, a package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Her name was written on it, in that same hurried, beloved handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a hand-bound book, leather cover, untitled. She turned the first page. The Last Rose, a novel by Ethan Carter. Her breath caught. She turned another page, and another. The book was full of their story, their moments, their garden, her rose, their silences, their almost love. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned slowly, afraid to hope. It was him, Ethan. Thinner, a little older, but his eyes held the same storm and softness. "I was going to leave the book and walk away," he said, voice shaking. "But then I remembered something you said, that love isn't always about words being enough. It's about writing them anyway." She couldn't speak. Tears welled in her eyes. "I found my voice again, Isla," he continued, "but I realized it was always yours. Every sentence, every paragraph, every page, they were always about you." She stepped toward him, the garden silent around them. "I waited," she whispered, "like the rose." He smiled, took her hand and said, "Then let me never miss another season with you." Years passed. The rose still bloomed each spring, but it was no longer alone. They planted more, white ones, pink ones, wild ones. The garden became a sanctuary for their love. Ethan wrote every day. Isla illustrated his books. They grew older together, side by side like ivy climbing the same wall. And people say that sometimes if you pass by that garden gate at dusk, you'll hear a man reading aloud to the woman he never stopped writing about. The story is always the same. It's the one that began with a shared book, a hidden rose, and a love that waited patiently to bloom. Because some loves, like the last rose, arrive late, but they never leave.